Friends, my dears, today I come to you with the most valuable lesson I've learned in over 30 years in the stock market, after knowing countless people, and this lesson isn't written on any stock ticker or chart. The lesson is this. If you want to know whether someone is truly wealthy, don't look at their bank balance. Look at how their mind settles when they lie down at night. Let me start with a small story for you. Years ago, back when I made my first big investment, I had two close friends. Both did roughly the same kind of work and earned roughly the same amount of money. One of them, let's change his name and call him Dean, would buy himself something new the moment he got his paycheck each month. Sometimes a watch, sometimes a phone, sometimes a furniture set he replaced simply because he was bored of it. Every time I visited his home, I'd find a living room more crowded, more full, more showy than the last. But there was always a restlessness in Dean's eyes, as if something were about to go wrong at any moment. My other friend, let's call him Adam, no wait, let's call him Max, lived in the same city, the same neighborhood, at almost the same rent, but his home was far simpler, just as much stuff as he needed, clothes he actually wore, no space sitting empty, a place that was genuinely lived in. Max carried far less money in his wallet than Dean did, but there was always a calm on Max's face because he was saving. Because he had a small portfolio he was growing, because every month he directed part of his paycheck into investments before he ever saw it. Years passed, my friends, and today Dean is still living paycheck to paycheck, while Max is his own boss, a man who can travel wherever he wants, whenever he wants, who can comfortably turn down an offer he doesn't like. The reason I share this story with you is this. Wealth isn't about the money you earn, it's about the relationship you build with the money you earn. I've seen this over and over in all my years in the market. I've seen people make huge sums of money and end up with nothing to show for it. And I've seen people build enormous freedom on modest incomes. Today I want to share with you a few principles, what I call the quiet wealth rules, that I've applied throughout my life and that I've also observed in the most successful investor friends around me. These aren't here to restrict you, my dears. Quite the opposite. They're here to free you. Because I believe true wealth means reducing what's outside you and growing what's inside you. Now let's start with the first and most basic truth. Everything you own actually charges you twice. The first payment is the number on the receipt, that one we all see. But the second payment is a cost that most people completely overlook, one that quietly drains your pocket. Storage, maintenance, insurance, cleaning, and most importantly, the space it occupies in your mind. Think about it, friends. An exercise machine sitting unused in the corner of your home doesn't just cost you the machine itself, it costs you the square footage it occupies too, because you could have used that space for something else, even rented it out. A boat or a camper sitting in your garage, one you only take out maybe twice a year, quietly eats away at your wallet through insurance, maintenance, and parking fees, even if you never use it. Years ago, with my first big earnings, I bought myself a luxury boat. That boat took far more from me than the joy it gave me, because every winter's maintenance, every summer's insurance, every month's marina fee came out of my pocket, while I probably took it out on the water 5 times a year at most. The day I finally sold that boat, I understood that buying a possession means allowing that possession to bill you for the rest of its life. There's another side to this second cost that's easy to miss, my dears: mental fatigue. Every excess item in your home occupies a small corner of your mind, whether you realize it or not. You have to organize it, clean around it. Sometimes wonder, might I need this someday? Researchers say that clutter and disorganized environments raise our stress hormones and reduce our ability to focus. In other words, the excess in your home is wearing you out without you even noticing. And finally, the cost that gets overlooked the most: opportunity cost. Every lira you spend on a possession is a lira that never went into an investment, never grew, never multiplied. I remember a friend of mine, 15 years ago, who had a huge home gym built and spent a good deal of money on it. If he had put that money into a solid portfolio instead, today it would have grown into many times that original amount. So, friends, what he bought that day wasn't just equipment. It was giving up his future financial freedom. Now let me walk you through a few simple but extremely powerful principles I've applied throughout my life. First, before any purchase, calculate what that item will cost you per use. Say you buy a jacket for 1,000 liras and wear it only twice. That jacket has cost you 500 liras per wear. But if you buy another jacket for 2,000 liras and wear it 200 times, that jacket has cost you 10 liras per wear, meaning the one that looks more expensive is actually far cheaper. This little calculation, my friends, instantly breaks the spell of shiny packaging on store shelves, of advertisements, of last day of the sale banners. When you look at things through the lens of cost per use, you stop looking at what seems cheap and start looking at what actually delivers value. A quality mattress you sleep on every night, used over 10 years, ends up costing next to nothing, while a flashy item from a display window that gets used once and forgotten in a corner is actually the most expensive of all. The second principle, friends, is something I call the replacement test. Walk through your home and look at each item one by one and ask yourself, if this item disappeared today, would I go out and buy it again? Be honest. Would you really replace that fondue set that's been sitting there for years? Would you buy that shirt again, the one still sitting at the bottom of the drawer with the tag still on it? For most items, the honest answer will be no, and that no tells you a great deal. It means that item exists in your life not out of need, but out of habit, a passing whim, or perhaps because you couldn't turn down a gift. Years ago, I ran dozens of things I didn't need in my office through this test, and when I let go of most of them, I felt lighter not just in my closet, but in my head. Because one less burden meant one less thing to look after, organize, and think about. The third principle, my dears, never replace something just because you're bored of it. I see this constantly among people around me in investing circles. Most people who earn well but have nothing to show for it aren't replacing their things because they're broken, but because they're bored. Their phone works perfectly, but they replace it because a new one came out. Their car runs fine, but they replace it because the neighbor's car is newer. These replacements feel like progress, but they're really a quiet loss of wealth. Years ago, I set myself a very clear rule. I will not replace something just because a newer version exists, not until it genuinely can no longer do its job. That rule has saved me an incredible amount over 30 years, because I made decisions based on real need rather than fashion, advertising, or peer pressure. The fourth principle: make spending harder and saving easier. Human nature, my friends, always takes the path of least resistance. If spending is easy, you'll spend, and if saving is easy, you'll save. Years ago, I removed my cards from websites, deleted shopping apps from my phone, and gave myself 24 hours before buying anything unnecessary. These small obstacles worked far better than relying on willpower, because willpower gets tired but a system doesn't. In return, I redirected a portion of my paycheck into investments before it ever reached my hands, treating that money as if it didn't exist at all. Over time, I realized that I simply can't bring myself to spend money I never see, while money I do see is very easy to spend. So directing money out of sight became one of my greatest secrets. The fifth principle, friends: count your possessions regularly. It may sound strange, but try it. Count how many shirts you own, how many pairs of shoes, and write it down. People are usually shocked to discover they own far more than they estimated. Once you know you own 47 shirts, buying the 48th suddenly feels different. This awareness creates its own natural balance. The sixth principle: rent or borrow before you buy. When starting a new hobby, rent the equipment first instead of buying it. If the interest is genuine, you'll find out, and if it's fleeting, you'll have saved yourself a major expense. When I gave this advice to a young investor once, he didn't quite get it at first, but a year later he came back to me and said, "I'm glad I listened," because he'd gotten curious about a sport, rented the gear, and within a few months realized his interest was only temporary. Had he bought that equipment outright, it would be gathering dust in a corner of his house today. The seventh principle, my dears: don't forget the multiplier effect. Every major purchase brings along a string of smaller expenses with it. Buy a boat, and you need a trailer, a parking spot, insurance, maintenance. Build a pool, and you need chemicals, cleaning equipment, upkeep. So before making a purchase, look not just at the price tag, but at the whole ecosystem it will bring with it. Sometimes a decision that looks like it costs 5,000 liras turns into a 12,000 lira burden in reality. The eighth principle, friends: define what's enough before you even start earning. In my younger years, I saw this pattern. People who earn a great deal but are never satisfied keep raising their spending as their income rises. The new income creates a new standard, and that standard then demands even more income. The cycle never ends. Very early in my own life, I sat down and asked myself, what home would be enough for me? What car would be enough for me? What level of comfort would truly satisfy me? And I wrote down the answers. From that day on, as my income grew, my spending stayed the same, and the difference went straight into investments. That's exactly why I'm able to sit here having this conversation with you today. The ninth principle, my dears: measure your wealth by the options you have, not by the possessions you own. True wealth is the freedom to leave a job you don't love, the freedom to be there for your family when they need you, the freedom to start a new life in a new city whenever you feel like it. I've known people who looked like the richest people around yet had no real options at all because they were spending nearly everything they earned. And I've known people who earned far less but cut their spending, saved, invested, and built an enormous amount of freedom in their lives. The 10th and final principle, friends: instead of one big yearly clear out, build a habit of small, regular simplifying. Most people do a massive purge one day, feel great for a few weeks, and then slowly drift back to where they started. Whereas reviewing a few items each week, or looking at one category each month, is a far more sustainable path. Now let me suggest a small but effective exercise, my dears. This week, walk through your home and find 10 items that fail the replacement test. Then sell, donate, or get rid of them. This month, give yourself 24 hours before every non-essential purchase, and watch how many of your urges simply fade away in that time. This quarter, count your clothes, your kitchen items, your digital subscriptions, and set a reasonable cap for each category. These small steps turn into an incredible difference over time. Someone who stays true to these principles for 5 years ends up owning far less while having saved far more. And here's a secret almost no one tells you. This relationship runs both ways, my friends. Owning less earns you more money, but a person whose finances and confidence are secure also naturally needs less, because most of the time, our urge to shop is really an attempt to fill an insecurity, a void inside us. When you have a solid balance in your account, your need for status and your need for security both get satisfied from a different, far sturdier place. You no longer need to prove yourself through possessions, because your bank account already tells its own story. Spending less brings more saving brings security, and security reduces the urge to spend. It's a beautiful, self-reinforcing cycle. Unfortunately, the opposite is just as powerful. Spending everything brings insecurity. Insecurity drives more spending, and that deepens the insecurity further. This cycle continues quietly until a major crisis eventually forces a breaking point. Which cycle you're in determines the direction of your life far more than your income ever could, my friends. I've seen people earn a great deal and save nothing. I've seen people earn little and build tremendous freedom. The difference was never the number they earned, but the relationship they built with that number. These principles I've shared, my dears, aren't meant to restrict you or deprive you. Research shows that beyond a certain baseline of comfort, extra spending adds almost nothing to our happiness. Yet most of us act as if happiness scaled directly with how much we spend. True wealth isn't in the number of things you own, but in the breadth of the options available to you. Coming back to the story I started with, friends, Max's peace of mind didn't come from the size of his earnings, but from knowing what was truly enough for him. Dean's restlessness didn't come from earning too little, but from never having learned to say enough. Both are paths laid out in front of you, my dears. Which one you choose is entirely up to you. All I can tell you from 30 years of experience is this: the difference between owning your possessions and having your possessions own you is the single biggest factor determining the quality of your life. I love you all so much, my friends, my dears. Let's walk this road together. Let's grow together, and I hope this conversation becomes a starting point for you too. Until we meet again, take good care of both your wallet and your heart. Stay with love.